Andy, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's really good to be here. I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you. And my name is Andy Churgan. I am a senior consultant with BlackWolf. I've been an executive coach with real dedication to transformational leadership for the last 20 years. I've worked with all different kinds of organizations and sizes and types and leaders that are young and new and experienced. And I just love the ever evolving process of learning and growing, both for myself and also participating in that for other people.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to share about you.
Well, there is, but that's enough because they're not here to hear me talk about me.
Yeah.
How about if you introduce yourself?
Okay. What do I want to say about myself? It's a little bit about what Andy and I were talking about just a few minutes ago, is this insatiable passion and desire that I have for human beings experiencing their potential, which I think may be unlimited. So I don't know if you can fully experience the unlimited, but that's the direction I'm going. And the program that really launched BlackWolf is the Collaborative and Transformational Leadership Acceleration Program. And we built that program to really embed transformation and really help participants understand that transformation is really shifting your belief system and understanding that our beliefs drive our behaviors. And if you want to change your behaviors, you have to change your belief system. And I think that in my lifetime, that concept or context has been emerging. And given the platform that I've been really honored to have, which is BlackWolf, and asking myself at the beginning of the BlackWolf corporation, about 7 or 8 years ago, was what's the purpose? What's the, I knew that I wanted a consulting company. I've been doing consulting work for over 35 years, but it's the first time it was my own consulting company. So it's the first time that I really could, had a platform to communicate unedited. And so I really believe that the most important message that I could send, and it's the mission of BlackWolf Consultants, is to impact or transform or create senior leaders. Because my belief was that senior leaders, and as it's evolved, it's really evolved to include leaders, which is everyone. But the beginning of it was really working with senior leaders to really help them understand the transformation, because I think that I don't want to say all people, but most people really want to be in response to life, to really in response to their life and in response to life versus react. And so helping them to understand that reaction and response are really embedded in a belief system. So today we're here to talk about resonance and dissonance, which I think is also embedded in a belief system. And, you and I have had several conversations in preparation for this call, and I am excited and in wonder of the endless opportunities of seeing something you haven't seen before. I mean, it just never ever ends. I mean, just the conversation we had, earlier today, it was like I was seeing things they'd never seen before. I think it's endless, the possibility.
Maybe we should have recorded that conversation. I don't know, but each conversation is different. And so even though some of our topics will overlap, I'm sure there'll be differences. I just also want to make a note about how resonance is particularly relevant now, because think of all the barriers to resonance that have been added into our lives in the last 6 months here, that people are physically apart. People are divided in ways that it feels like they haven't been either ever. I don't know if that's literally true. It feels that way though. And so resonance is more important than ever. And also dissonance is something that is in a really destructive way an inhibitor to relationships of all kinds, to leadership, and to fulfillment, as you were describing, that potential that is limitless, and we never get there. We strive, but we never get there. So that's a context for this conversation, and I think it might be a good starting point, Robert, if you would help us understand what is meant when you use the terms resonance and dissonance, and how that connects to the brain, because what we talk about is this is the science and also the soul of resonance and dissonance. And so we're not the scientists, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on that side of things, but let's establish a couple of things there and then move over more to our comfort zone, the soul side.
Great. I love the title, The Science and the Soul, right, of resonance and dissonance, because, I don't think I've shared this with you, Andy. I mean, growing up and going through, high school and college, that was my passion. My passion was scientific. And, my college experience was, focused on biology and botany and the science of, and I got chemistry woven in there and physics woven in there. So there is a foundation and of science, the science of resonance. So I'm just going to share this one screen. This screen. And so the science of resonance is really from a scientific perspective, to really understand what happens to the heart, or how the heart responds, I think is probably a better way, how it responds or how it reacts. So the top box, the red box, is how the heart reacts to dissonance. And inside the box, dissonance, there's different words for it, which are really important to understand the words and the emotion that these words are representing. So incoherence, frustration, anxiety, worry, irritation. I added, when I read this, disempowering self-talk. One of our modules is listening to your internal dialogue. And what I want to say about that is that we all have it. And the majority of people who have done that module say, I don't think I have an internal dialogue. And our response is everyone has an internal dialogue. The question isn't whether or not you have an internal dialogue. The question is it empowering you or is it disempowering you? And if you can't hear it, it probably is either so loud that you can't hear it, or it's quiet, waiting for you to really challenge, to be empowering versus disempowering, and that's when it gets loud again. And so dissonance is about keeping us separate from ourselves and separate from each other. You know, the common word for dissonance, or the thought behind it, is that it repels, it pushes apart. And from a heart perspective, you can see that it pushes the heart out of coherence. And so the top box is really intended to represent, over a very short period of time, 200 seconds, that's what this is. When we're in coherence, our heart rate is all over the place. And as we know, the heart is the center of our physical body. It's also the center of our spiritual body, or, you know, understanding, you know, that the energies of the heart desire to be coherent. And so positive emotion, you know, appreciation, I shared gratitude, love, care, kindness. These are all words that really describe resonance. And it's interesting, when two human beings, or more than two, right, could be a whole auditorium filled, are filled with a coherent experience of the speaker or the leader or each other, the heart goes into a regular heartbeat, which of course in our lexicon is healthy and unhealthy. So the red box is really an unhealthy heartbeat, or the heartbeat of someone who is unhealthy, and the blue box is really a representation of what does a healthy, or someone who is healthy within themselves. So it really is, the science is really building the bridge between this physical body that we have and our mental or intellectual understanding, and dropping it down into understanding how powerful and important, this is a phrase that is probably over 20, 30 years old, emotional intelligence in leadership. You know, so emotional intelligence is really about demonstrating a coherence in your leadership or your relationship with others. Not always, I'm sorry, Andy, just not always easy, but always important.
Indeed. And so I just want to underline one part of that, and that is, so there's a coherence within each person, and then between people, and it's between one and one, between one and many, right? And so it's at all of those levels that we're talking about this. So this resonance exists within each of us, between us, and among us, if you will, right? So it's at all of those levels that you might consider this. And so when it comes to looking at how that affects leadership. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to say that we are glad to take any additional questions. I don't want to hog all the questions for just ourselves, and encourage people in the Q&A box at the bottom. You can enter in a question. We'll pause probably halfway through or at the end, and incorporate any questions that you want addressed. This tie to leadership, Robert. So obviously coherence is the place that you know we want to be, and you know, what's it like from a leadership perspective when there is resonance, when that coherence exists between people?
Let me address that. Let me first say that incoherence and coherence exist within us, and that one of the things that we really want to raise the awareness of us human beings is that we can choose. We're the chooser. So whether we're conscious or unconsciously choosing, we're still choosing, and we're choosing to be dissonant. And we also have the power to choose to be resonant. So I just wanted to make that point. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen for a second. And
okay, there we go. Back to us.
Andy, please ask me again the question?
It probably won't be the same question unless we could replay.
Well, yeah, I hope not.
But I was tying it to leadership and saying,
Okay.
so what resonance, like what are the indicators, and, how do we recognize resonance in the form of leadership?
It's a great question. And I think that there's several levels to the question. And no surprise, I'm going to start at what I think is the top level. And so the top level, level is just a word, but the essence of resonance is love, which you don't hear a lot of business people talk about love in the context of business. I don't care. I think it is a driver that cuts right through and connects all of us human beings. And, in preparation for today's call, I really kind of did a deep dive, into some of the authors that, surround me. I have hundreds of books. I love books. And part of the process is really intuitive. And I pulled out a book by Carolyn Myss, M-Y-S-S, called Sacred Contracts. And it's a pretty thick book, and talking about scientific and soul, sacred contract, she's really a soul intuitive, but she's also entering helping us to enter into a conversation with ourselves and ultimately with others that will transform us and really then have us be the conduit of transforming others. And I think that as much as anything that I can think of, this is what resonance is. Resonance is authenticity. It's genuineness. It's being genuine in your communication, so that there is this linkage, if you will, between what is on our shoulders and what is in the middle of our body, called our heart and our head. It's important to understand that emotion, which I think probably up until when we were young was discounted, but I think in the last 30 years, it's not being discounted the way that it was before. And I think Daniel Goleman's work around emotional intelligence and leadership was a real breakthrough, and it really has gained an important and valuable momentum. So I think that what Goleman talks about in terms of the importance of resonance, and I'll just read a bit of an excerpt from Goleman's book, The Primal Leader. The root of the word resonance is revealing. It means to resound. Resonance is the reinforcement or prolongation of sound by reflection. That's like, the science part. The soul part is by synchronous vibration. So it's literally, resonance literally is moving into a vibratory state where you and I are aligned, or if I'm speaking, you're aligned with what it is that I'm saying. In the conversations that we've had, this is what we've experienced. I'll assert, is because we laugh and we have fun and we're talking, and if senior leaders can really kind of drop out of, just being strategic and tactical. I'm not saying that's not important. I'm just saying that that's not what how to lead people. You don't lead people with strategy and tactics. It comes after you inspire and motivate human beings. And the way that you inspire and motivate, or the way that you create resonance, is to speak authentically to them. And here comes the other aspect, the other hand, right? So one is authentic and genuine. The other is love and care, or care and kindness, or love, care, and kindness. So when you put those two together in communicating to someone, you're literally creating a connection, a vibratory connection between yourself and others. And which is, I think we desperately need to do that.
We need to do it, and people, I mean, there is no question that people respond to it, right? I mean, it's what you know, inspiring others. I've never forgotten this. Inspiring others was rated, I think it was Zenger and Folkman, but it was rated as the most important leadership quality by everybody. I mean, you know, sample of tens of thousands of people in their studies, and it was also rated the lowest from a competency standpoint from across all these different 360s and feedback and so forth. So it's in high demand, incredibly valuable, and yet it's in low supply, right? And so yet what you're describing is that the pathway to inspiring others involves this kind of authenticity and connection and love. So in your experience, what are the things that get in the way with that? Because I don't know who's going to sign up for not wanting to be an inspiring leader. Nobody. And yet we know that isn't the case. So what gets in the way?
You know, I think a lot of things get in the way. But the way that I hear your question and asking me is like what's the nugget? What's the essence of what gets in the way? And what I would say to you is, I think this is all of our work. It's the fear of it's fear, just fear. And then I think there's ways in which fear gets represented by each individual. But I think that there's a collective fear of the fear of not looking good. You know, so there's this, yeah, like, how are you doing? Great. You're not always doing great.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm, you know, got allergies going. Hold on, here it goes. Woo! Sorry about that.
That's okay, very authentic.
Yeah, thanks. So it's the fear of not looking good. I think here goes another one. God, sorry, buddy.
And so, you're not experiencing the fear of not looking good right now. I just want to say, really seriously though, there is. I mean, obviously, you know, right now you would prefer to not have to sneeze, and yet you just sneeze because that's what's going on. And those allergies are actually happening. So right. Authentic is includes the willingness to be real, and that includes, you know, whether it is
timely or not,
whether it's sneezing or some other way of say not being perfect, then, you know, that is a demonstration of it. And of course, you didn't plan that, or did you?
No, I couldn't plan to sneeze like that. You bring up a great word, Andy, and it's perfection. We talked about perfection, and I think Brene Brown's work really has put the impossibility, the how unrealistic, how self-defeating, how dissonant perfection is. And as far as I could tell, we talked about this, as far as I could tell, I'm going to say almost no one, certainly no one that I know, I'll say that. No one that I know, and I've been fortunate to know some very, very powerful leaders, spiritual leaders, business leaders, etc. And they're not perfect. And and here's the great thing about them. They'll tell you they're not perfect. And so now they told me, you know, executive coach Krenza, but perfection really gets in the way. And so if you take perfection and looking good, so looking good is really pretending that I'm perfect, that I've got my shit together and I know exactly what I'm talking about, and this is what we have to do in order to succeed. You know, you were saying how there is a survey, a piece of data that exists out there that the number one quality that is most important to leaders today is, I'll say, is resonance, is being resonant. So I think that to really kind of simplify and kind of go a little bit off of Goleman's script, is that resonance is really coming from love, and love for me is the intent to contribute, and understanding that I am the chooser of my beliefs. So it's about raising our awareness to the point where I am choosing my beliefs. Why would I choose disempowering beliefs if I'm the chooser? Well, people choose disempowering beliefs because they don't believe that they're the chooser. So it's really raising the awareness. And there's all kinds of literature that exists that says we are the chooser, is resonance, and fear is dissonance.
So then, since we're imperfect, it just strikes me that, we've got a nice little conundrum going, right? So we are choosing, and resonance includes acknowledging sort of imperfection, right? And not really being attached to the idea of perfection. Right. So that tells me that even if I choose resonance, that there are going to be times where I'm off my game. There are going to be times where I am my own worst enemy. Right. Where I say something I really wish I hadn't said, destroy a relationship, or not destroy, but harm a relationship that I cherish, right? So,
or spoke in a way that that is heard different than the way I intended.
Yes, right. So, because intention matters, and at the same time, if it's received in a different sort of way, then you still have a gap that you need to navigate, right? So right. It may have been your intention, one thing, something else happened. All of those conditions, though, tell me that so some sort of idealistic idea about resonance is incomplete, because we have to live with our imperfection. That means we have to really get astute at how to recover, how to recognize when we're getting off track, and how to recover. So let's talk about that for a few minutes, and share some insight, maybe things that you've experienced or observed, in leaders.
Well, here's like the radical reason that we are. That we thrive to be perfect, and we're not. And it's back to what I said at the very beginning. It's the fear of looking good. So this idea of looking good is what keeps driving this desire to be perfect. And for the most part, it's an unconscious desire. I mean, it's so deeply embedded in us that it's an unconscious desire. That's why. Kind of being quiet and listening to yourself, mindfulness, meditation, whatever, has really risen dramatically in the last 10 years. I take that as a very encouraging sign about really being self-aware. So the techniques exist out the wazoo. I'm not a technique guy. What I'm really looking for is to be self-aware of when I am choosing disempowerment, and there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of distractions that we human beings can avail ourselves of. When you are quiet, I'm going to call it meditation. When you're meditating and focusing on your breath, and being silent for 30, 60 minutes, the only person that is there in the room with you is you. And the importance of hearing the inner dialogue, I can't overstate it. because the only way that we can change something within us is to acknowledge that it is within us. And now I'm back to resonance. When I acknowledge whatever state that I'm in with genuineness and authenticity, it creates resonance, because here's everyone desires to be connected. They don't desire to be, separate. They desire to be connected. My perspective is, the truth is that we already all are connected, and that moving ourselves into a conscious state to choose that we're already connected really starts to drive the behaviors of being connected and not, or resonant, where our hearts are really healthy and they're vibrating with other healthy hearts. That answer your question?
Yes, and more, right? So I think it takes us in some interesting directions. I want to add something of a personal kind of revealing, because I want people to be able to relate to what we mean by this. That you're talking about when an awareness occurs to you that you are experiencing dissonance, something that is leading to dissonance and contributing to it, and then making a different choice. My experience for myself, and maybe it's just me, but I suspect that there may be some others like me, and that is that our minds can confuse us. They conspire to make it seem like, and yes, it's my inner dialogue, but my inner dialogue might be something like, that idiot, they're wrong. I don't have to put up with this. I'll show them. I don't know. I don't want to, make it sound like, that's the only thing that my inner dialogue is, but I want to acknowledge that my inner dialogue isn't a direct clue for me that I'm in a state of dissonance and need to do some correction and some repair, because I need to recognize that, everybody's annoying me. Well, one possibility is that everybody else is annoying. And another possibility is that there's something going on with me that is causing me to experience other people as annoying, right? So it's kind of like that. So it's oftentimes for me a very indirect process, where what I'm actually experiencing is what seems like the real emotion of outrage and all those kinds of things that go along with that. And yet what that is just a symptom of a little bit of unhealthy inner dialogue going on. And once I have that awareness, then the process you described becomes more straightforward, for me. So I just want to put that out there for everyone to just kind of don't look for the thought to pop into your head that's, I'm having disempowering and dissonant thoughts right now. No, your mind will conspire to make you believe that everything that you're thinking is absolutely true. And that's where you need to really choose curiosity and explore it from a different direction. And that'll lead you to, or at least for me, that's what leads me to the path that connects me back to myself and to others.
I think that's great, Andy. I think that, stepping out and risking that it is a state that people want. Harvard Business Review does this. I mean, magazines do this all the time. They assert that this is what human beings want. And I would say to you that self-reflection, self-awareness leads to that. Now, I can't, this goes right into, our business conversation. I can't impact others positively. I'll say I can't have a positive impact on others greater than I'm willing to have a positive impact on me.
Yeah.
So, there's a reason, I think there's a great reason why you have to start at your relationship with yourself, and then really, and this, and being in resonance with yourself, so that what you're thinking and what you're believing and how you're behaving is resonant with the heart. So I think there's some fascinating work that's been done over the last 10 years, because technology is really allowing us now to really measure the electromagnetic impulses of the heart and the brain. And this, I don't know if I've shared this with you, they're measuring that the brain always follows the electromagnetic pulse from the heart, not the other way around. The heart doesn't always listen to the brain. So back to your point about the mind, a teacher said to me, and this is 40 years ago, the mind is your best friend and it can be your worst enemy.
Indeed.
And that I contemplated that one for a long time, and it's exactly what we're talking about, is that your internal dialogue, and just that little bit of opening, and opening yourself up to, are my thoughts empowering me or are my thoughts disempowering me? Because underneath the thought is, what's the belief? So that's the next question. What's the belief that's driving the thought that's disempowering me? And Robert Keegan from the Harvard Business School wrote a book called Immunity to Change. You know him well. He's a good friend of Bob Anderson, who created the Leadership Circle profile, and the two of them have worked closely together for years. Keegan documents out the wazoo, probably a lot more than I would ever want to, but he documents that our beliefs drive us. And so our empowering beliefs drive us and our disempowering beliefs drive us. I think that we are living in a time, a transformational time, where the opportunity for transformation exists from the perspective, and I'm talking about it from the perspective of empowerment. So what I want to do for myself and for others is really to say, are your beliefs empowering you or are they disempowering you? And if they're disempowering you, this is a methodology, a modality, which is really, there's the science and the soul of it, right? But if it's like, love yourself, and I don't want to be misinterpreted here, and I don't mean I mean like concrete, empowering love yourself, that I'm doing my best. This is back to connecting with perfection. We're not perfect, but we can strive to do our best. This is where motivation and inspiration come from in leadership. So when leaders are, really empowering themselves and seeking to empower others and inspiring and motivating others to do the same with their teams and cascade, this is, I'll probably die believing it's the possibility that exists. This is the possibility that exists.
What do you think? What do you think that right now, for this time that we all find ourselves in, are the, some of the key things for leaders to focus on in order to create resonance when it's such a headwind, of conditions around us?
Yeah, I think, we're talking about, the impact that COVID is having right now, the pandemic. I guess I'm going to sound like a broken record. It's that the desire to have an impact on others has to start with the desire to have an impact on ourselves. And I believe that contribution, the what is my contribution question and the who am I question precede the what am I here to do question. Like what do I do? And yet I still see that that's the predominant question. You know, you know, 10 or more years ago, I was at my son's senior year. He was, you know, playing lacrosse, and I went and visited the lacrosse team, went to University of Montana, and they were all depressed. All these like young 22-year-old, you know, young men were depressed. And, you know, it was like the night before a game. And usually, you know, I'd fly in. I was living in New York at that time. I'd fly in and, you know, spend a couple hours with them. And they were all excited and, you know, like athletes, you know, really pumped, excited. They were all, so I said, guys, what are you upset about? Like, what do you do? You know, and this big defenseman, he was as wide as he was tall. I still remember his name was King. I don't know his whole name, but it was King. And I said, King, what's going on? He said, Mr. Krenza, he said, you know, we keep getting asked the same question. I mean, there was some preamble and conversation was going on, but eventually he got to, you know, like, well, give me the bottom line. And he said, everybody's asking us these questions and, you know, and we don't have the answers. And it dawned on me, you know, that adults do this to their children that are graduating from college. And it's to ask the question, now what are you going to do when you graduate? And what I'm saying to you, what I'm saying to the audience is that if you don't answer the who am I question, and you don't answer the why am I here, like what's my contribution question, the what am I going to do question is like, it doesn't mean anything. And it's depressing the shit out of, you know, our college graduates, just like, I'll just speak for myself, it depressed me. So, you know, parents, and I said to King and to the team, I said, the reason why you don't have an answer to the question and you're depressed because you don't have an answer to the question, because you don't have an answer to the question. I said, so I really want to empower you guys. Like, that's not the question. What are you going to do? You know, like the who are you question and the what's your contribution question, those are the important questions. And then what are you going to do is going to fall right out of that. So what are you going to do is not the most important question. It's the who am I and what's my contribution question. And, you know, I don't know if I went off on a riff and didn't answer your question, but that's really, that's what's in my heart and my soul, is really human beings genuinely knowing who they are, which is really choosing empowering beliefs, and then knowing what their contribution is how am I going to, you know, live this life that I have in a contribution to other human beings to really contribute to their lives.
And I think that's beautiful. I see how that translates in terms of, you know, again, all those levels within ourselves, between people, and then among people, right? So now that's a great guide for resiliency for each individual at this time, because we all find ourselves, well, I'm going to make the statement all, but I think there's probably no exceptions to this, find ourselves having, you know, a range of kinds of days that are from, you know, highly productive and feeling pretty normal to not so much. And, but also between people, what it says to me is that, that when I focus on who I am and what my contribution is, you know, my purpose, that my actions follow from that, and I'm more responsive to what other people need and the support that they need in order that they might, you know, carry on and you know, get about the things that they need to do. And then among us, right? So on teams, leading organizations with, you know, many people involved in it, it's this very same idea. So emphasizing those things, it seems to me, like translates at all of those levels. Of course, I agree with you. It starts with self, right? So if we don't do that work on ourselves, then we can't be of much help to anybody else. And when we do, it seems like we have a great possibility and potential to be very helpful to others at a time where people really need it.
I'm loudly and passionately agreeing. And I do want to also address the value and the importance of strategy and tactics in business. And I want to emphasize that I'm hesitating simply because I'm about to make a big statement. I think that we don't see the strategy or the tactics that we can demonstrate or employ as long as we're stuck behind a facade of dissonance, of inauthenticity, of perfection. Like I have to be perfect. And so typically, and I've been in many of these sessions, with a McKinsey or a Bain or Boston Consulting, and kind of as the consultant to the, I'll call it the global president, and the global president, what wants some feedback from me afterwards about how they're conducting the strategy and tactics session. And I'm convinced that the conversation that they need to have, they're not having because they're afraid of not looking good. And, or, like of saying, this isn't working. We're like just doing a different version of what we did last year, which is really what a lot of business strategies are. And we're paying millions of dollars to companies like Bain and McKinsey, and and they don't care. They'll just, okay, we'll just keep taking the money. So, and I'm not angry at them. I'm just saying that back to the COVID conversation, there's always an opportunity in breakdown. Always. I've said this many, many different times before COVID, but I say this in COVID as well. To ask the question, like, what's the opportunity here? So I think this conversation and having meaningful conversations with each other, the technology that is in front of us that we're using right now, the Zoom technology or the Microsoft Teams technology, the video conferencing technology, use it and take advantage of it, but use it to have a breakthrough and look at COVID from a place of who do I want to be? So I'll be optimistic here, and positive, at the end of the pandemic. Who do I want to be? And if you ask who do I want to be, when on the other side of this pandemic, it's like, okay, great. So start being that now. Don't wait, because if you wait until the pandemic is over to be that person that you want to be, you're going to miss the point. So as soon as the awareness arises within you that you can be and choose to be someone empowering versus disempowering, to be authentic versus inauthentic, to be caring versus selfish, that's the beginning. And the same, and nurturing that inner dialogue and that consciousness within ourselves is attractive. And I mean, not just it's attractive like it's physically attractive. I mean, it's attractive. It attracts because I believe deeply in my heart and soul that human beings want to be resonant with each other. I mean, and this isn't just theoretical. I mean, you and I have seen over and over and over again as we do these programs that human beings really want to be resonant with each other, and just given a little bit of push and understanding that they can choose. I just hope I live long enough to really see the change in the world.
Well, right. So it seems like not waiting and, until some future time and, being that right now is, one thing to embrace. It seems like another one that, came before that, and what you were saying is embracing the unknown and the uncertainty of it, not feeling like you have to have all of the answers, either for yourself or for others or for whatever part of the business is that you're responsible for. But it also seems like there's a belief. I mean, you articulated a belief that I'm personally very resonant with, and I'm thinking that a lot of other people are as well. But you articulated a belief that is, if you create an environment that encourages and makes it possible and gives permission to those kinds of things that are resonant, as we've been talking about them here, that is what people will choose. Maybe not 100% of the people, maybe not all of the time, and reliably and consistently, they will choose that, right? So it's a matter of having the willingness, which speaks to a little bit to courage and what it takes in order to have the courage to do that. So I wonder if you'd speak a little bit about that, because I've heard you talk about that in other conversations we've had.
Absolutely. I think that courage is always required. I just think that there is forces that exist that will challenge us to demonstrate courage, and demonstrating courage with others, it is after we've demonstrated courage with ourselves. But after we've demonstrated courage with ourselves, the familiarity or the relationship with courage evolves into I choose courage, because the kind of the antecedent or the other side of the coin of courage is fear. So for me, the definition of courage is taking action in the face of your fear. What was the story that I shared earlier about that, Andy?
Well, I know one of them that you've shared is from Brene Brown's work, and one that she has shared many times, and I think it's really a powerful one.
With the Navy SEALs?
Yeah, talking about the linkage between courage and, what comes along with it. What's a constant companion with courage includes vulnerability.
So I should get some royalties. So everybody, the Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, that's where Andy and I are talking from. There's also a book that she has come out with recently called Dare to Lead. So it's in either Daring Greatly or Dare to Lead. And it's she was at she's from Houston. She was with the Navy SEAL unit in Houston. She was invited to speak to them. And she asked this question. And her question was, have you ever seen courage demonstrated that it didn't include some kind of vulnerability? That was kind of, like the idea behind the question she was asking. I don't know if I've got it right verbatim. Total silence. 30 seconds of silence, as we all know, it's a long time for a group to be silent. And so she knew that she had asked a powerful and important question when it was silent for that long. Finally, one of the Navy SEALs raises their hands and says, "No, ma'am, never saw courage demonstrated that it didn't include some vulnerability, some kind of fear." So what she was touching on was like what drives us to take action even if we're afraid. And it's so courage clearly is one of the important, if not the most important element. There also is so I'll talk about the training that the Navy SEALs go through, which is got to be one of the most rigorous training programs, physical training programs, of that you could conceive of, mentally and physically. So there's a mental element and a physical element. what I want to say is understanding that developing a perspective based on repetitive action, repetitive behavior, consistent belief is why the Navy SEALs are able to have their fear and take the action anyway. And so that's real, you know, I mean, it's life or death fear. I shouldn't say it's real, because not life or death is real fear as life or death fear. So, you know, practice. So it's important to really understand what the word practice means. You know, practice meditation, practice yoga, practice, you know, physical fitness, practice mental strength. You know, it's repetition. That meditation is really a repetitive process that is always providing us with a different insight. But once that process begins and we start having insights, it's a, you know, a teacher once said to me, we're all addicted. It's just a question of what you're addicted to. You know, are you addicted to good things? Are you addicted to bad things? You know, so it's not a question of whether or not to be addicted. It's a question of what you're addicted to. So being addicted to being empowering, I mean, you know, back to the Navy SEALs, you know, they're addicted. They're addicted to this physical, you know, quality of physical fitness that they've achieved. What we're saying to you is that get addicted to your inner state as well. I'm not saying don't be addicted to being physically fit. I'm saying balance that physical fitness with mental fitness and heart fitness and an internal fitness that is an honoring of empowering beliefs, empowering consciousness.
Thank you. And I just want to add one small piece to that, and then maybe you could wrap us up, you know, with some closing words. And that is that from Brene Brown's work there, No Courage Without Vulnerability. Vulnerability includes emotional risk. Tie that back to what you were just saying. So practice emotional risk. Don't wait until some future time when you're going to do that, right? So when you sense that there's emotional risk, lean into that. Don't let that be a reason to not do things, because if you're going to build the muscle of courage and it requires vulnerability, and vulnerability includes emotional risk, guess what? You can't get around it. You better start working on emotional risk, because there's a direct line between that and courage, which is a pretty positive attribute according to, you know, I mean, I think just about everybody. So how about some final words to close this wonderful discussion out?
You know, Andy, I'm going to read a little bit from Brene Brown, and you know, it's a topic that I think we just briefly touched on, but how it's kind of a topic that is the final element that we all grapple with, and it's the element of forgiveness. So let me just read this. So when I talk of forgiveness, I mean the belief that you can come out the other side a better person than one being consumed by the anger and hatred. Remaining in that state locks you in a state of victimhood, making you almost dependent on the perpetrator. If you can find it in yourself to forgive, then you are no longer chained to the perpetrator. You can move on, and you can even help the perpetrator to become a better person too. So forgiveness is not forgetting or walking away from accountability or condoning a hurtful act. It's the process of taking back and healing our lives so that we can truly live. So, you know, Andy, as you know, and I'll tell everybody in the audience, you know, that this is not a rehearsed process, and I I trust the process, you know, and that what's going to be said is, you know, necessary. And I think that ending it, you know, this way by talking about forgiveness is really a great way to end it. And really understanding and deeply understanding that there is a definition of forgiveness that is fundamentally different from the one that we grew up with. And making that shift to the forgiveness of the process of taking back and healing our lives so we can truly live is a transformational understanding of forgiveness.
Indeed, thank you. It's a wonderful way to end our discussion. I want to thank you for engaging me in this discussion and allowing me to participate in it. And for everyone else, thank you for being here. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for your presence. That is invisible as it is, it's been felt and very much appreciated. And want to wish everybody a good rest of your day, whether that is in the evening like it is for us, or whether it's morning where you are. Hope that you have a good rest of your day, and find resonance in your day and in your life.
Be resonant. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.